Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Countdown to Infinity. This is episode 11. Today, we are talking about Avengers Age of Ultron. I am James. I am one of your countdownsmans, and I am joined by Matt. Matt, how's it going?
I'm good, thanks. I guess I am also one of the countdownsmans.
Yeah! I mean, I'm more or less basically just stealing this intro from Marshall at Limited Resources, who like he is a limited resource and Luis is a limited resource or something like that. I basically just stole it and just made up a word so that it would sound cool.
Mission accomplished.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't sure if it sounded cool or not.
Yeah, no, I'll give that to you. Mission accomplished.
All right, fantastic. Hey, we're here today. It is the 11th episode. Man, that's insane, by the way. A lot of more movies came out, and this movie's only 3 years old.
Yep.
I watched it last night, and I was like, man, I remember this movie 5 years ago. Oh, God, it came out in 2015. There has been a lot of movies since then and now.
Yeah.
I ain't complaining, though. Oh, man, I don't even know where to start with this one. What do we normally do here?
Well, normally we talk about a variety of things, like who's in it, and who directed it, and what box office take was, and things like that. But since you're dropping the ball, why don't I kick us off here? So,
hell yeah.
Avengers Age of Ultron. As you may recall, Phase 2 doesn't actually end with an Avengers movie. We still have one additional Phase 2 film left to go in Ant-Man next week. But this is the climactic battle of the second phase, so to speak. So this, of course, was directed by Joss Whedon, and it is once again an extremely Joss Whedon film. It stars all your favorite stars. We got Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, Don Cheadle, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Elizabeth Olsen, both new additions to the MCU with this film. We've got Paul Bettany, who actually has a part beyond just being a disembodied voice in this one. Colby Smulders, Anthony Mackie, Haley Atwell, Idris Elba, Stellan Skarsgård, James Spader as the titular Ultron, and Samuel L. Jackson is back as well. Spoilers.
Oh my God, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. So this movie was made on a budget of $316 million gross, $267.4 million net, and its box office take was astronomical.
That is an obscene refund, by the way.
It is, isn't it?
Tax credit or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah, that's a $50 million tax credit.
That's ridiculous. Okay.
So $49 million tax credit.
Cool. Hollywood's cool.
Yep. But even more obscene, this movie made $1.405 billion with a B as its box office take.
I make that in a weekend.
I don't think you do, unless your name is Jeff Bezos.
Hey, my name is Jeff Bezos, and it's Bezos, not Bezos.
Well, okay, fine. Now I'm going to get letters about that. Thanks, James.
Well, no, because I literally just corrected you. So you should be fine.
Yeah. All right.
What else we got? I was reading a little bit into this one the other day. Joss Whedon wasn't initially necessarily set to direct this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, so when he did the first Avengers movie, Whedon had the option to return. So it wasn't like he signed on for a two movie deal. He didn't sign on for any more or any less. It was just this with an option to return. I would assume due to the unbelievable success of the first Avengers movie. But the way Hollywood works, I'm sure he probably had that guarantee to come back, or the option to come back even before it hit theaters.
Probably.
But I thought it was very interesting to read that in 2012 he had stated that he would want the sequel to be smaller, more personal, and more painful by being the next thing that should happen to these characters, and not just a rehash of what seemed to work for the first time. By having a theme that is completely fresh and organic to itself.
Which I think, so I think he almost nailed all of those in various ways.
So it is not smaller.
It's not smaller. It's definitely not smaller. But I think it is definitely more personal.
It is 100% more personal. It is 100% more painful.
And not just to the characters, but also to Joss Whedon. This is the movie that has come to be known as the film that broke Joss Whedon. Ultimately, sort of leading to his retreat from Twitter and his essential retirement from the MCU. He has gone on record saying that making this movie nearly killed him. This was not necessarily a happy experience for Joss Whedon, along with the Avengers that are in the film.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Another fun Joss Whedon fact that I think I'll just throw in here before I forget, because I inevitably will. Do you want to know why he named Tony Stark's later AI as, or not AI. Sorry, I'm thinking of something completely different. Why he named Hulkbuster Veronica?
I don't know why.
Quote, I just decided to call it Veronica because Bruce Banner used to be in love with a girl named Betty, and Veronica is the opposite of that.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, isn't that... I love that.
Yeah, that's really good, actually.
I legitimately love that. It's just such a great little reference.
Yeah.
Oh, I read that and I was like, I need to absolutely 100% make sure I mention that in the podcast. So there it is. Within 10 minutes, I figured I'd get that out, because if not, I would have completely forgot.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a cute little fact. I like it a lot. And I didn't know that.
Matt. Do you like this movie?
I do like this movie.
Yeah, I definitely I like this movie even more now than I did before, having just now rewatched it for the podcast. I really, really like this movie a lot, and I am excited to get into that even more. But first, how about you give us your trademark, the reason why people listen to this podcast.
Is that why people listen to this podcast? Oh, jeez, they should get a refund.
I don't know, but either way,
I'm assuming it is.
Let us have it. What happens in this movie?
Okay, so the movie opens with the Avengers in the form of Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, all raiding a Hydra facility. We basically assume that in the intervening time between the last Avengers film and this one, that they've been, gallivanting about the world, wrecking Hydra bases and mopping up loose ends since the destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Hydra facility that they are headed towards is located in the Eastern European country of Sokovia and led by Baron von Strucker, who we met in the tag scene at the end of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, along with Loki's staff, which is what the Avengers are there for. He also has 2 test subjects that he's been manipulating with the power of the staff, and who he has given powers. We've got Pietro Maximoff, who is otherwise known as Quicksilver, and Wanda Maximoff, who is otherwise known as the Scarlet Witch. And they have powers. Quicksilver can run real fast, and the Scarlet Witch has reality manipulating powers in the comic books, but is like, in the comic or in the movie, they've sort of scaled her down to like telekinesis and the ability to read minds and project images into people's minds and things like that. But anyhow, they've shown up. So the Avengers raid this base. They make most of Hydra look like a bunch of chumps. They bust into the base. They find the scepter, and along the way, Hawkeye gets shot and takes himself and Thor and Black Widow out of the fight as they sort of evac him to the Quinjet, and Iron Man goes in to the base more or less alone to get the scepter. Captain America faces off with Baron Strucker, takes him into custody. Iron Man gets the staff and has a mental image projected into his mind of all the Avengers dead before him, and Steve briefly comes to before finally passing away with just enough time to say, "You could have saved us. Why didn't you do more?" And then he dies. Shield broken in half and the whole bit. So this, of course, rattles Tony quite a bit. And they all get back to Avengers Tower. Stark and Banner head off to play around with the staff and figure out what it is and what it does. And they've got 3 days with it until the going away party for Thor, at which point he's going to take the staff and head on back to Asgard. So they spend their time fiddling around with it. They discover that inside it is something resembling a computer processor. It's this little yellow stone that seems to be real powerful, and they figure that Strucker was trying to figure out how artificial intelligence works. So they decide to dive down that rabbit hole. And they run a bunch of simulations, but they can't really seem to make anything work. So they leave it running on automatic and go off to the party with everyone else. Little do they know, basically the moment they walk into the room, it works, and a new artificial intelligence is born in the form of Ultron. Ultron being Tony Stark's idea for this global defense system, artificially intelligent global defense system. And he thinks it will bring them peace in their time. So they go off, have their party. Meanwhile, Ultron wakes up, appears to be malfunctioning and is maybe a little malevolent. Ultron basically kills Jarvis and proceeds to manufacture himself a body out of the disregarded, or the sort of like broken remnants of Tony's like autonomous Legion suits. So the Iron Legion, that's right. He builds himself pieces of the Iron Legion. So he then crashes the party, basically tells the Avengers that the reason the world is as unpeaceful as it is because the Avengers exist, and that the only way to save the world is to force humanity to give up their violent ways and to destroy the Avengers. So he attacks the Avengers. They all get, beaten up. Avengers Tower gets wrecked pretty bad. They do finally manage to stop him, but not before he gets into the internet and goes and finds himself a whole bunch more bodies back in Sokovia in the lab that Strucker had been working in. Are you with me so far? So, anyhow, taking a minute to breathe here, remember where I'm at. So, I'm trying to remember what the connecting point is here, because I don't remember.
Which is
the connecting point that gets them to the tankers. Because Ultron goes to meet up with Ulysses Claw, along with the Pietros, in order to get the vibranium to build himself a new body. That much I remember. I don't remember why the Avengers are there.
Well, the Avengers go there. Oh God, yeah, that's a good. Well, so here's the thing that I actually thought, or while watching last night, I was struck by was they straight up. I love how he mispronounces Wakanda. First off,
yes.
While looking about it on the computer, but yeah, I can't actually recall exactly why. I think basically, it wasn't essentially just. Where is Ultron going to go? Like,
that's
who's
right.
he going to
that's
seek
right.
out?
So it was,
and Tony's like, I know this guy. Steve gives him that little, that look, being like, whoa. He was just at parties. Like, I didn't sell him anything. Blah blah blah.
Right, because we run in weapon circles. Because yes, that's right. Because they got all their files wiped, and they were looking for a connection. I still don't remember what the specific thing that tweaked them to it was. Like, why they knew he would be after vibranium. But anyhow, it doesn't matter at this point, at this level. But they're going through the old Shield, like hard copy Shield files, and yeah, Tony says, hey, I know this guy. He might know something. He's an arms dealer. His name is Ulysses Claw. He lives in a tanker off the coast of Africa. So they go off to find him as well. They all meet. There's another fight in the tanker. in the tanker, basically all of the Avengers, with the exception of Hawkeye, are mind-controlled.
That's a good little nod, by the way.
Yes, it is. It's great. I love that
Yeah.
bit. So we've got Thor gets a vision of the destruction of Asgard, and Heimdall accuses him of being responsible for it. Natasha gets a vision of her time in the Red Room and what she endured in order to become Black Widow. Captain America gets a vision of Peggy, and like she tells him that the war is over and he can go home, and then suddenly the whole like welcome home party is empty and he's all alone. We don't know what Bruce Banner sees. We just know that when he does, it turns him into the Hulk and he runs off to attack a city.
I always just assumed that he didn't necessarily really see anything.
They just made him mad.
I think they just made him mad, or just sort of like blind with rage.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's like it's an unrestrained Hulk out.
It's just an unrestrained Hulk out. You've never really got a sense of anything that would set him off like that in the... Well, I mean, obviously there are things that would set him off like that are from his past. But clearly nothing, I think, to the levels that the other Avengers are dealing with there. And I mean, just going by, this is Hulk's last appearance before he returns in the most recent Thor Ragnarok. And I mean, just by seeing that film, we didn't really get a glimpse of anything there either, right? Like there was nothing to answer that question. So I just assumed it was just like, Hulk smash, but just do it in the city.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
We do know that whatever it was enough to scare him back out, like into fearing the Hulk again. Which I mean, like, it doesn't matter what he saw. It was just like he got hulked out and turned towards a city where he attacked civilians, and then he gets like gun shy about turning into the Hulk again.
Sure, but I mean that
follows him through the remainder of his arc into Thor Ragnarok.
I mean that's always been with the Hulk, though, right?
Well, yeah,
he's always. I mean, you saw it in, at the very beginning scene where, or not the beginning scene, but the scene where they're flying out after collecting the staff. Thor talks about how, he should celebrate, basically how he murdered a bunch of people.
The gates of hell are...
No, I didn't want to. It's just like, no, sorry, I just meant,
wounded cries.
Wounded cries and bruised elbows, and I don't remember exactly.
Sprained ankles and gout, I think it was.
Yeah, stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's always his concern. That's always Banner's thing, is
but I like it more so after this, I think. Like,
absolutely.
At the end of the Avengers, he was like, well, I'm always angry, I can turn it on and direct it. And then like at the beginning of this one, he's like not crazy about what he does as the Hulk, but he's still in the place of like, I can turn it on and direct it, and we have a pressure valve to turn it off, right? And then he goes into a full-blown like unrestrained angry Hulk, and then is like spooked to the point that he won't participate in the final fight until he's forced to Hulk out again, right? Yep. Like, and then he ostensibly doesn't turn back into Banner until years later.
Yeah.
So like, there's some interesting character that develops out of this film. Anyhow, so the attack on the tanker ships happen. Everybody gets their visions. That shakes everybody on the team, takes basically the whole team out of commission. Iron Man, however, has been chasing Ultron at this point and is not on site when all this happens. And so, of course, the Hulk goes and attacks the city. And Iron Man is forced to respond. So out comes Veronica, and we have just a fantastically great battle. I love this fight. It's
a very good fight
between the Hulkbuster and the Hulk.
It is actually, I think, probably the best set piece in the film.
I think so.
I really do enjoy the first fight. And we'll talk more about the last fight a little later. But this is the fight for me in this movie. It's It's just really, really, really good.
Oh yeah. And yeah, we can come back to it a little more later as well. But yeah, this fight is just phenomenal. It's so good. So that all happens. This leads to, in the first fight at the beginning in Sokovia, we saw some indication that civilians and people around the world aren't so crazy about the Avengers. When the Iron Legion shows up and tells people, we're here to help, please back away, they're like throwing acid at them and throwing rocks and shouting, Avengers, go home. And so when the attack of the Hulk happens, people get real upset. They do manage to stop the Hulk, and everybody retreats back into the Quinjet. Maria Hill suggests that the World Security Council and the UN are talking about potentially putting out a warrant for the arrest of Bruce Banner. They basically are not very popular. So they retreat. They go to a safe house. And it turns out that the safe house is Hawkeye's family's home. And we get a neat little minute of just character development between a bunch of the different characters as we take a little bit of time to breathe at the farmhouse. Bruce and Natasha have a chance to sort of talk about the romance that's sort of starting up between them, and Thor decides that he can't wait around and he goes and takes off on a vision quest, basically. Cap is just sort of like festering with anger over the fact that Tony has not just endangered the team but also endangered the world. And he and Tony sort of have it out verbally, and then we get a bunch of background on Hawkeye and the humanizing element of Hawkeye and the team, and this all ends when it turns out that Nick Fury's there, and he shows up and is like, "Listen, you guys, you need to put an end to this. I put you guys together for a reason. Ultron is one of those reasons. Go out there, pick yourselves up, and do something about it." So they rally and they start figuring out what they need to do. Nick Fury goes off and says, "No, I'm going to go do something big, I think. Hopefully something dramatic." So they figure out what Ultron is doing. Turns earlier in the movie when Hawkeye got shot, they brought in one of the world's foremost plastic surgeons, doctors of some kind, who has this device that can be used to actually build tissue. And her name is Helen Cho. She's from Seoul. So they realize that Ultron is continually trying to develop human bodies, like humanoid bodies, and constantly evolving himself into the ultimate form. So they come to the conclusion that now that he's got all this vibranium, he's going to take advantage of Dr. Cho's cradle and build himself a new sort of ultimate form body. So they head off to Seoul to stop Ultron from uploading himself into this body that he's creating. And there is another big fight scene that takes place in Seoul, which has my favorite shot in the whole movie in it. That shot being the back of the semi-truck just taking off with rockets and flying out of the city. That shot is so good. I love it. It's so goofy. Just the back of this truck flying out of the ramp. So anyhow, they do this. Upon the development of this body, Wanda uses her her mind reading powers to sort of read the body and the consciousness of Ultron that's being implanted into it, and she realizes that Ultron is basically planning to exterminate all life on Earth, and so she turns on Ultron, and with Wanda comes Pietro, so the twins basically both turn on him and help the Avengers save a bunch of people in Seoul as Ultron again makes off, but the Avengers manage to capture the cradle. So they bring the cradle back to Avengers Tower, and at the behest of Dr. Cho, who says that the only person who will know what to do with it is Tony. So they bring it back to Avengers Tower. Tony starts working on it, and has come to realize at this point that Jarvis wasn't destroyed earlier in the film, but in fact was just broken down to his base routines. But he managed to upload himself to the internet and has been just working nonstop on automatic pilot to stop Ultron from gaining access to the world's nuclear, or to America's nuclear arsenal. And so he downloads Jarvis, basically repairs him, and imprints Jarvis into Ultron's body, because Tony only knows how to save the day by doubling down on his own mistakes, and creates this new being. But just before he can, Captain America shows up and basically accuses Tony of doing exactly what I just said he did. It's like, you just built a monster that's about to destroy us all, and now you're trying to build another monster. What's wrong with you, Tony? The Maximov twins show up, and Quicksilver ends up just using his super speed to unplug the cradle and stop it from happening. And then Thor shows up, having completed his vision quest, and uses his powers of thunder to strike life into this being, because as it turns out, his vision from the vision quest he's been on told him that Tony would create a being that they would need the help of in order to stop Ultron. So he shows up, he lights he lights the Vision up, Vision comes to life, and after a brief little fracas, Vision realizes, wait, no, I'm actually, I'm a good guy, we're on the same side, we need to stop Ultron, and so he joins the Avengers on their ultimate quest to put an end to Ultron. So, what is Ultron doing with all the extra vibranium that he had? Well, he's been basically building this giant rocket machine under Sokovia that will lift a city into the sky and then drop it back to Earth like a comet to wipe out all life. And so they head off to Sokovia, where Ultron has set his plan in action. They start fighting all of the various Ultron bots with all of the Avengers in tow. The city starts to lift into the sky. Nick Fury shows up with a helicarrier. S.H.I.E.L.D., or what's left of it, rescues all the civilians on Sokovia as just as things are starting to come apart. One of the Ultron bots manages to activate the comet drop of the vibranium device. Quicksilver dies, saving Hawkeye and a child. And this is a rough fight for the team, basically. But they do ultimately manage to kill all of the Ultron drones. They manage to get all the civilians off. Most of them are pretty sure they're going to die, but just by being a team and getting each other's backs, they manage to pretty much all get off Sokovia intact, with the exception of Quicksilver, of course. Hawkeye is, pretty worn out by the end of it. The Hulk ends up on a Quinjet alone after chasing the last Ultron bot, and he knocks the Ultron bot into the forest, basically. Vision ultimately catches up with that last Ultron bot, and they have a conversation about how humanity is doomed, but they're beautiful because they try. And Vision puts an end to Ultron, and the Hulk disappears. What am I missing? I've got most of it at this point. They save the day. The city breaks up in the sky. It doesn't end all life on Earth, and then they establish a new Avengers base in upstate New York, and a new Avengers team forms. Tony decides to retire from the Avengers, and Barton also, Hawkeye also basically retires from the Avengers and heads home. And the two remaining Avengers of Steve and Natasha begin to train the new team of Rhodey, Vision, Falcon, and Scarlet Witch. and that is basically how the movie comes to an end.
My God.
There's a lot going on in this movie. This movie
Yes.
is dense. This movie is really, really, really dense with stuff.
Yeah, so I mean I think that is generally considered to be its biggest flaw. I think a lot of people overall. I think this movie is look. People love these movies.
Yes.
We love these movies. It's why we make a podcast. There is arguably no really bad movie in the MCU. However, this is absolutely one of the ones that I think catches a decent amount of flack. And one of the biggest arguments for that, which is funny considering it goes against what Mr. Joss Whedon said himself in 2012 when he stated that he would want this sequel to be smaller.
Well, yeah, it's the opposite of that.
It's not. It is significantly larger in scope. Not only do you have more characters to juggle,
Yep.
you are just trying to fit so much more story, and you're trying to give every single character his or her moment to shine.
Not just moment to shine. They give every character. They essentially give every character in this movie an arc. Where the first Avengers movie treated the team as the main character. I think this one does too, in terms of like the primary character of what's going on in this movie is the Avengers and not the individuals within.
Yes.
The individuals within all get character development as like independent characters and like significant character development. It's beyond just a moment to shine. It's like characters in this movie do a lot and have a lot happen to them as individual characters beyond just as the way they fit in the team.
So I don't think that's true for everyone. I think there is definitely I think it would be foolish to say that they're all on the level playing field when it came to the character development or time that we got to spend with them in this movie. I do believe that there are people who moved the needle forward more so in terms of character development, by which I mean, so Iron Man, Tony Stark, absolutely, right?
Yep.
I think probably almost beyond anyone else, we saw just a tremendous amount of things happening in that man's mind. He was dealing with a lot of really heavy stuff, and this is stuff that we've seen before, right? Like this is the Tony Stark that we have come to know in the previous 3 Iron Man movies and the first Avengers, and it's the Tony Stark that we will continue to see into Civil War, Spider-Man, and I'm sure when Avengers comes out in a few months. I don't think the same can be said for Thor, for instance.
No, I think you're right.
But then Clint, Hawkeye, arguably actually possibly one of my favorite characters in this movie.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the minute you get him into that home setting, you just see this completely different side of him, which is fantastic. I think he has the strongest rousing speech monologue that he delivers at the final fight to Wanda. Was really impressed. I honestly just didn't remember that he got as much to do in this movie as he actually did, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So one of the things with this movie is there is a recurring motif among the various characters on the Avengers, where the major characters in this movie each have a moment in the film where they refer to themselves as monsters, right? Mm-hmm. Cap sort of does it jokingly to Maria Hill, where he's like, oh yeah, what kind of monster would subject themselves to experimentation to protect their country? And oh man, Tony says it to Bruce when he's like, we're mad scientists, man. We're monsters. You got to embrace that. Natasha has that moment when she's talking to Bruce at the farmhouse, where she's talking about her past at the Red Room and how she was essentially made into this assassin, and the core of that scene is where she talks about how the graduation ceremony from the Red Room is to sterilize female agents so that they can use their sexuality as a weapon without having to worry about the emotional attachments of motherhood. And that's obviously something that upset her character, because she dwells on it quite a bit during the film. But she, the core of that monologue being that, she's essentially given up emotional attachment and the ability to have a child and so on, so that she is more easily and more free to just end life, basically. And so she's like, do you really think you're the only monster here, when talking to Bruce? And like, the one Avenger character that I can think of just off the top of my head that doesn't have that moment is Hawkeye. And the whole reason for that is that Hawkeye is the human. He's the humanizing character on the Avengers. He is the one that is not this, like, he's a dude with a bow, on a flying city, and nothing makes sense. And
his wife says the same thing to him by basically looking out the window and talking about how, he has found himself in the company of literal gods.
Yeah, and he's like,
you are just a mere mortal.
Yeah, and he's like, well, what, you don't think they need me? And she's like, no, I think they do, and that's scarier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like that.
Oh, go ahead.
That whole like the human among monsters element of Hawkeye's character in this movie is really, really important to the film. Like, critically important to the film. And it's sort of apocrypha or what have you of this movie that when Whedon was making it, he wanted to cut out Thor's Vision Quest sequence to trim down the movie. And the powers that be at Marvel basically put a gun to his head and said, no, you have to keep it. And he was like, well, no, it just pads out the time and we don't need it to accomplish the story of the film. And they were like, if you take it out, we're taking the farmhouse scene. And he was like, the farmhouse scene is the emotional center of this movie. You can't have it. And they were like, well, put the Vision Quest in. So he did, and then he cut the Vision Quest down to the absolute minimum they would accept. Because like in the trailers and things, there are scenes from Thor's Vision Quest that didn't make it into the movie. But yeah, like I feel like this movie just doesn't, at least on a thematic level, doesn't work without that section of the film.
No, absolutely.
Like it's super important to the function
absolutely.
of this movie. And so is Hawkeye.
Yeah, that's fair. So would you agree that, because I texted you last night and I said there sure is a lot going on in this film, and you said that's why you liked it.
Yeah. So I really like the ambition of this movie. And I like the fact that it's dense. I like the fact that they basically go down the like human and monsters motif. I like the fact that we get character development for every Avenger. This movie is essentially about the destruction of the Avengers, right? Like, this is the Empire Strikes Back of the Avengers trilogy, so to speak. This movie is about the team being sundered by a force that overwhelms them. And while they survive, they basically survive by sacrificing the Avengers to do so. We get the movement of Captain America from we get the culmination of his plotline prior to Civil War, where he goes from, at the very beginning of the Avengers movies, he's the perfect Boy Scout, ready to follow orders, ready to march into war at the order of his superior. And then he sees S.H.I.E.L.D. corrupted by Hydra, and he sees that these forces of authority using overreaches of power to control people. And then he sees Tony do it and just completely has his trust in everyone around him shaken. And that sets him up as he goes into Civil War as this, like, no, the only person I can trust to save the world is me. And that, like, he gets there through the events of this film. I love the same in Tony, but he goes the opposite way. He starts the Avenger, like all the MCU, as like the only person I can trust to save the world is me. And by the time he gets to this movie, he's so shaken by what he's gone through that he's like, we need to stop this. The fighting needs to end. There needs to be a protective suit of armor around the world. Like, I need to put an Iron Man suit on Earth, so that there is a force out there that is protecting us from interstellar threats, that prevents anyone from attacking us, and allows us to just go about our daily lives. And so he's gone the other way. He wants, and at the beginning of Civil War, he wants a formal authority there to oversee the Avengers and make sure that they're not stepping beyond their reach and that they can be held accountable, which he would never have done at the outset of the MCU. I really like, for the lack of having Betty come back, I really like that we get to see Bruce Banner acting like a human being and having a bit of a relationship with Natasha. I like that Natasha is reckoning with her past, and the things she's done in her past, and how she can be both sort of like a good and a bad guy at the same time, or how she makes up for the sins of her past. I love the amount of like Hawkeye we get in this movie, just because, as I've already said, it's great. But there's so much, like, even Thor is, like, over the course of these movies, gone from like, I'm ready to be king to I just want to gallivant around the universe and fight dudes, and then like, oh, now I've got to mop up all of Loki's messes. And then by this point he's like, oh geez, I'm gonna be responsible for the death of Asgard. Like, that sets him up for his plot line in his next movie. Like, this movie does so much, and it delivers on so much of it. Like, this is definitely not as precise or as efficient a movie as the first Avengers is, but like, it does so much world building and so much character building, and like 95% of it works. Like, it does such a good job of everything it sets out to do, and it bit off so much that like this movie is an achievement by existing.
Fair enough. Sorry. No, I think those are all incredibly good points. Yeah, I still think that just it's always going to be something that people fault this movie for, and that's fine. I definitely fall in the camp of I would prefer less. You mentioned how it does a lot of world building. I would prefer less world building in my Avengers movies, personally. I think I feel like there's enough space, enough things happening in between them where the world building can happen that I would prefer to not see as much happen in these Avengers films.
That's fair.
I don't think it was over the top with this one, but I think it was coming close. I am really, really hopeful for Infinity War that this is literally just like, this is 18 movies worth of storytelling coming to a point.
Yes.
Where I'm very optimistic that at least the movie that we're getting this year will do nothing more than let all of those movies come to this point and get us somewhere where the next few movies afterwards make sense, and then we get to whatever the heck the movie that's coming out next year is called.
Yep.
And that can be what sets us up for the next decade.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, like, this one is the middle point, whereas the next one is, like, not the end point, but getting, it's essentially part one of the end point.
I think it's definitely, it's part one of the end point, and then we'll be looking at sort of like almost like a soft reboot, right? I think we will get a lot of what we've already known and a lot of really cool new stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm anticipating that Infinity War the world building that's going to exist in Infinity War is going to be there to contextualize Captain Marvel. Because Captain Marvel is the one new character being introduced in between Infinity War and Avengers 4. And
I guess I don't even know if they need to necessarily...
I don't think they can get away with it. I think they are going to... Like, I think they're going to drop a hint or something.
Oh,
right?
well,
like,
sure.
There will be a world-building element that leads to Captain Marvel. Whether that's a big set piece or I don't know that Captain Marvel is necessarily even going to show up in the film. But in the same way that, like, Ulysses Claw was in this one, where they're like, by the way, we're batting around the idea of Black Panther.
Sure.
I think there's going to be some element to Infinity War that does the same thing.
Sure, but we do know that Captain Marvel is taking place before anything
for sure
that's happened in the MCU. So I would assume there's only so much they can do to really introduce that character. But yeah, I mean, it would be foolish for them to not.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, I'm almost certain that whatever the stinger on the end of it is, like, of the stingers, there's probably going to be a stinger for Avengers 4 and a stinger for Captain Marvel, whatever those are. But I think there's going to be some, like, world building element actually built into the film around how, like, back in the 90s we had somebody that went to space and never came back. Yeah, like something like that, or like, I was a commanding officer of a Air Force pilot hero back in the 90s who did this thing. Yep,
that's fair. Do you feel so? Another thing that I'm just sort of circling back to this quote that I brought up at the very beginning of the show, which was smaller, more personal, more painful. And we agree that it's not smaller, but it is more personal and more painful.
Yes.
But then he essentially goes on to saying that he doesn't want it to just be a rehash of what seemed to work the first time. Do you think that maybe he's faltered there a little bit? That maybe it's not exactly like the first one, but when you look at the sort of the macro level of there's the bad guy who has a big army, and I think so. This is I mentioned earlier that my favorite set piece, my favorite fight scene, is Iron Man versus the Hulk.
Yes,
which is sort of this midway point of the movie. It's just a really incredibly fun fight. You can sort of get there's this sort of sense of humor to it. It's almost like he's having fun with it, even though he really shouldn't be. Which I kind of love.
Come on, Bruce, you gotta work with me.
Yeah, you get to see really neat tech with Veronica, and the fact that it's a freaking orbiting, it's a satellite. Like, that is obscene that it is a satellite.
It's super cool though.
It comes down and it's just a really great fight scene. Because for me, the final fight scene is probably it falls a little short for me because it feels so very New York. It is a big fight in a city with what seems like an unstoppable force of, bad guys who are centrally controlled by one thing. It's not quite to the same, like, kill Ultron and then they all die, because that's the whole,
it's the opposite of that.
It's the hook, is that they have to literally kill every single one of these robots if they want to kill Ultron. But I think when when I look at it at that sort of macro level, and not drill down to it, and in fairness, that's how the vast majority of moviegoers view these films, and it is a reason why a lot of them will call this out for being more or less the same as the original Avengers. What do you got to say to that?
So I kind of agree with you. My biggest disappointment in seeing the Infinity War trailer was the giant army of Thanos' minions in Wakanda. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, they're fighting another army again. They can't create a villain that is believably strong enough that it would take an entire team to fight just the villain, so we got to throw another army at them. Which frustrated me a little bit. And in rewatching this, I did think to myself, it's like, man, I wish they didn't have to fight an army every time.
It's actually one of the reasons why it really drove it home while watching Avengers Age of Ultron how much I really enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy, because you get down to that last scene and it is literally the Guardians of the Galaxy, the four members of Guardians and the bad guy, and it's them versus him, and that was it, and it's so freaking good.
Yeah, and it's actually almost the reverse, because they literally throw an army of Nova Corpsmen at Ronan and he beats them all.
Yeah, like Ronan's army, a big deal is never made of the fact that Ronan has an army. The big deal is the fact that Ronan has a freaking Infinity Stone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Although they don't really fight him so much as just control the Infinity Stone and vaporize him.
But it's them going head to head with him. Like, they go even before they crash the ship, and now we're just talking about Guardians again, but it's such a really good movie. It's always just like, we need to go after Ronan. We got to get Ronan. I just really like it.
Yeah.
I think it's really good.
Yeah. But all that said, on the I wish they didn't have to fight an army again. That said, I think on the I agree. There are some things in this movie, particularly that element, that feel like, oh, we're just doing Avengers again. But I think if you look at the movie as like the inverse of the Avengers, where it's like the Avengers was the team coming together, and it's like, can the team form and save the world, right? Like, that's the central question of the Avengers. It's like, will they be able to work together to stop this force? Whereas this one is like, the question of this movie is like, will the Avengers be able to survive fighting this? It's like, they start the movie operating as a well-oiled unit, and they end the movie having completely come apart at the seams. And to the extent that a couple of members go away and they have to form a new team in order to shore up their ranks, and people are on each other's case and not trusting each other anymore. Like, as I said, they sacrifice the Avengers in order to save Earth. As like, they sacrifice what the Avengers are in order to save Earth. And it is essentially the opposite of the Avengers. It's like, Avengers is building up and this one's tearing down. And to make that sort of thematic jump from one to the other, a little bit of replication of scenario needs to happen in order for them to play off each other that well. But they didn't have to have another army in this one. They just wanted to have, Ultron is a classic Avengers villain. When they said it's like Age of Ultron, everybody lost their damn minds, because that's exciting. So, but Ultron's whole thing is, as you said, he has a distributed intelligence that lives in multiple bodies, so the army thing just sort of comes with him.
That's fair. Hey, let's talk about James Spader.
He's so good.
because he's really, really good in this movie. I don't even really know what else. I just kind of wanted to acknowledge the fact that I think he's phenomenal in this one. I'm a big fan of him as just an actor. I think he's great. And other than Ultron having weird, creepy human lips and I think teeth, maybe, is weird. The actual look of Ultron is super badass.
Yeah,
like
I love the way they justified it. His like face, because if you look closely at his face is made up of little interconnected plates that all move independently of one another, and so he forms like lip movements with the movements of the plates on his face. I like that it wasn't just like robot lips. It was like his face actually moves around. It's just a cute little like, well, we have to find a way to make him emote.
Yeah.
Well, let's
fair.
just build his face so that the metal bits can move around.
That's fair.
And reconfigure themselves.
Okay. The movie's good.
The movie's good.
If not insanely ambitious in terms of what it's trying to do.
Yep.
You feel like it fires at 95% while doing so. I would agree with that. James Spader kicks ass as Ultron, looks super cool.
Yep.
All right. We are quickly approaching the 1 hour mark already. So let's start talking about the little things. You got any nitpicks with this movie?
Oh, there are a million nitpicks with this movie. As I said earlier, this movie is looser than the Avengers is by a mile.
Yeah, it's definitely not quite as tight. All right, hit me with a couple. Hit me with your big ones.
Oh, nitpicks. So nitpick number one, them killing Quicksilver feels like a cop-out. Like it
Somebody
works.
needs to die. It's Joss Whedon. He has to kill somebody.
Well, yeah, but it feels like a cop-out. It feels like a real big cop-out. Like,
so who do you kill?
well, okay, so the movie was clearly like one of the things that this movie is doing is setting up the expectation that Hawkeye is going to die and then subverting it.
Yes.
And like, as I think it works. Like, I almost think Whedon painted himself into a corner on this one where it's like, well, the only person I can kill is Quicksilver, but having introduced Quicksilver in this movie just makes it feel cheap. But like the way they do it is, you know, he's a villain turned hero that sacrifices himself to save the other hero. And he has the nice little didn't see that coming moment as he falls over. And, you know, they set it up well with like Hawkeye. They didn't set it up. So nitpick number 2, they didn't set up Hawkeye's rivalry with Quicksilver as well as they should have. They give him a few moments of like, nah, I could shoot you right now and no one would know, but it feels like it's coming a little too late in the game. They do the setup so that there is at least the like, you know, by the time that death happens that the rivalry exists, but that whole thing feels accelerated.
The problem with that rivalry too is that you know, in that scene where he takes off and Hawkeye's standing there with his bow being like, nobody would ever notice. The way that scene is written and acted, it just kind of feels like cheeky and not rivalry. Like he respects the kid. Like he's kind of a, you know, young douche, but that's fine. He's a young kid. Like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I feel like
it didn't really pay off in the way that maybe they were trying to go for.
Yeah. I don't think they needed to be rivals. I think the like grudging respect is fine. I just think they needed to build it up more and over a longer period of time. It needed to come into the film earlier than it did. But the problem is that Quicksilver doesn't join the team until essentially minutes before that fight. So it just feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. I do feel like, I don't know, man. It really feels like, I mean, you talk about Joss Whedon sort of painting himself into a corner. I feel like Marvel has kind of painted themselves into a corner when it comes to legitimately killing one of these characters. Like, I just think they think that it will be so poorly received that I just kind of feel like they're going to be unwilling to ever actually do it. Like, they'll always leave this... like, maybe they'll do it, right? Maybe in this upcoming in Infinity War they kill Captain America, sure, but I honestly feel like if they do it, they will drop a little hint. They'll work it into the post-credit scene that maybe he's still alive, because man, we as a company who wants to make a buttload of money really don't want to piss off the millions of people who come and see these movies, because at the end of the day it makes you feel happy and excited and wanting to come back.
Yeah.
And I think the minute they kill off, especially one of these, you kill off especially Captain America or Tony.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think they can do it. I just don't think that, honestly, like, it just comes down to, I don't think the people who pay for these movies will be like, yeah, no, you're not allowed to kill Iron Man. Iron Man is why we are billionaires right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know.
I mean, like I've said before, I don't think they have to kill characters in order for these movies to resonate and have stakes and be meaningful and so on. Like, the killing characters is a cheap way to achieve that. It's like, dying is easy, living is hard. And so
look at what you
I
just
know, right?
Hamilton.
I did. So killing characters is easy, but making them, making these movies have import and stakes and emotional resonance without resorting to that is harder. And I think that I'm fine with them not killing anybody. I would be fine to see a few of them ride off into the sunset at some point and make way for new heroes. Like, they're going to have to, right? People are going to get too old to carry on. I would rather, at least in the... So, I mean, there may just be a decision point that they have to come to that they're not ready to make yet, which is deciding how long they can or how long they want to continue making these movies without ever rebooting them. Right? Because if the plan is to make these movies for another 10 or 20 years without ever rebooting them, then they can conceivably just pass the mantle to a new character. Bucky could become Captain America, or Sam could become Captain America, and Chris Evans can go on and do his own thing. And they can pass the mantle to these heroes. They could bring in a Riri Williams for Tony Stark to pass the Ironheart mantle to. They could bring in a Kate Bishop for Hawkeye to pass the mantle to, right? Like, they can have those characters. They can have characters that they haven't brought in from the comics yet also join the team and cycle in new hero titles and powers. And they can do that sort of thing for a while until they want to revisit the well of, like, Steve Rogers as Captain America, because
as Captain America, yeah,
the moment they decide they want to do that again, they have to reboot.
Yeah.
So their other option is to begin recasting people, essentially one at a time, so that the character that person plays can be carried on forever, but done in such a way that people still buy it and it doesn't negatively impact the bottom line. Because what happens when they recast Iron Man, but the rest of the Avengers are still the same? Do people still turn out to that movie to the tune of $1 billion bank? And is the negative impact of that bigger or smaller than if they had Iron Man live, but now the person who is on the team is Ironheart? Right? Like, what has the bigger downside for the bottom line? And it may just be that they're putting off making that decision as long as they possibly can.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because they just don't want to make that decision. And so keeping the characters alive for the foreseeable future gives them the freedom to make that decision at the latest possible moment.
Yep. All right. Hire us, Marvel. We're good at this, I guess, is the shorthand on that.
I don't know that we're better at this than they are.
It's probably true that we're not, but I want to be very rich
You want to be in the room where it happens?
Stop that.
No.
See, you pushed it. You dropped in the first one so well. It was really good. I was impressed, and now you're just pushing your luck.
Yeah,
man.
no, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't be me if I didn't drive a joke into the ground.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's kind of my brand.
All right.
Okay, so goofs.
Yeah, give me your goof.
Okay.
Look, so I'm just going to get
There
this
are
one
so
out of
many
the way, 'cause there's a lot of really good goofs in this movie. The best goof in this movie, and possibly the best goof in all of MCU, and just one of the best scenes in all of MCU, is the scene at the party after after everybody's gone home, and they're giving Thor a hard time because all he does when he lifts his hammer is just a magic trick. Anybody can lift it. It's just, it's a magic trick. And he's like, go for it. And everybody tries in their own fun way. Everybody has a good laugh. And then there's the perfect moment where Captain America tries to move it, and it just wiggles just a little, just like a millimeter.
Yep.
Just enough to catch the attention of Thor and just have this perfect look on his face of, oh, what?
Yeah, no.
Like
that scene lives or dies on Chris Hemsworth selling it, and he does it flawlessly.
Yeah,
it's just like his face dropped, like he's smiling, and then he just notices it, and his face drops briefly, and then like other people sort of notice that he's spacing out, and he's like, everything all right, Thor? He's like, yes, everything's fine.
Yeah, 'cause it has nothing to do with the fact that Rogers can move the hammer, because of course he can move the hammer a little bit. He's, the man with the heart of gold, right? Like, he's a really good dude, so it makes sense that, he can move it just a little bit. But no, it's Thor's face is just...
It's perfect.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
It's one of the best scenes in MCU.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yep. So,
all right, give me.
I'm going to just
goof.
run down a bunch. At the party, Rhodey and his story, it's like, so then I flew
His
up and
story's
dropped
good,
the tank on his doorstep and was like, boom, looking for this.
Yeah. And
It was
Thor
like,
and
what?
Iron and Tony are just like, no.
Yeah, I don't even know why I hang out with you guys. With everybody else, that story kills. It's like, oh, was that the whole story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes. Very amusing.
Yeah.
And Stan Lee's cameo.
Yeah, Stan Lee's cameo is very good in this one.
Excelsior. And man, there's one other in the party that I was thinking of, but it's gone now. It doesn't matter. One of my other favorites is please be a secret door, please be a secret door, please be a secret door. Yay.
Yeah.
That one's really good. I think my favorite is also probably the hammer, but I love the like constantly ribbing Cap for saying language at the beginning of the film.
Oh,
and it
that
like
one's
happens.
really
it goes
good,
through the whole film. They keep bringing it back. Like that one's great. Oh man, that like this is a very quippy movie. Oh, the please go to sleep, please go to sleep, please go to sleep, please go to sleep, and then the Hulk spits out his tooth and it's like, sorry. That like everything in that scene is great, as we have discussed at length already. I it's not as much a goof, but I do like the conversation between Vision and Ultron, where Ultron is just like, they're doomed. And Vision is like, yes, but like that response is sort of unexpected, but also great.
It is a very quippy movie.
Hello, dear. When he
Yes,
walks
that
into
one's
the barn, and sees the John Deere tractor. Yeah,
That one's good too.
that one's good too. But there's lots. Oh, you'll have to be faster than that, Cap. Before he gets shielded into a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
I feel like similar to the Avengers, like it's Joss Whedon and just his writing style has always been like this, right?
Yeah.
Like he is just a very quippy writer. Like so much of his humor is just dialogue based.
Mm-hmm.
He's not as big into the visual humor as he is into the into the just the usage of the language, and he does it arguably better than most when it comes to stuff like this. So it makes me sad that this movie more or less killed his future in the MCU, because I would have loved to have seen a standalone movie from Joss Whedon. I think he did a phenomenal job with the Avengers, better than I think anybody ever expected.
Oh yeah.
And then
what like blockbuster movie experience did he have before this? It was like Serenity.
Yeah, like he shouldn't have been able, like, writing it, sure, right? Like, Joss Whedon is the guy who you get to write your comic book movie, because of course he is. He wrote Avengers. Yeah. He wrote Avengers 2. He wrote Justice League.
Yeah, ask DC.
Whoops. I think I would have loved to have seen him. To be honest, like an Iron Man movie.
Oh,
like,
I was thinking Thor. I was thinking he would have been amazing for Thor 3.
Thor 3 would have been really good. I think him in Iron Man 3 would have been really fun. I think him on a Guardians movie would be ludicrous.
Yeah.
I think
Joss Whedon Guardians would be the Avengers again, probably. But yeah.
All right. We need to rank this movie. When we started, I said before we even hit record, I said I have no idea where I'm putting this movie.
Have you come around?
I have. I know where I'm going to put it, but
Okay.
I'm going to ask you first. So currently, your list.
You don't even need to rattle it off for me. You can rattle it off for the listeners, but I'm
just going to give the listeners the top 5 right now.
Okay.
Your top 5 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yep.
Avengers,
Yep.
the first one. Iron Man, the first one.
Yep.
Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thor.
Yep.
Where do you place Avengers: Age of Ultron?
Where do you think I place Avengers: Age of Ultron?
I think you place it at number 3. I think it becomes your new number 3. I think you put it after the original Avengers, but ahead of the original Iron Man. I think that's where you put it.
So
I think if you put it any higher, you're mad. But I could also maybe see it going 1 or 2 lower.
Yeah.
And by mad, I mean just surprised. I would actually be surprised if it was higher than
So,
this.
I mean, you're right. I'm not going to put it at 1 or 2. My Windmill Slam was number 4, behind Iron Man. But now that I was like, oh, I'm so sure of where it's going, and then you don't need to read my top 5 to me, and then you did, and now I'm like, maybe I do like this better than the first Iron Man. I hadn't considered that. I was like, oh, this is going in ahead of Guardians of the Galaxy for sure. It's like one above Guardians of the Galaxy, but
Interesting.
yeah, now I don't know.
Now you're unsure.
Yeah, I like Iron Man is such a good, contained, fun, entertaining movie. Whereas this is like big, bombastic, huge, ambitious, quippy mess, right? And it's like, what do I like more?
And that's the thing to remember, folks. As always, this MCU ranking is literally just which ones we like the best. I think that near the end, Matt and I could probably come to a pretty solid agreement of what we believe to be the best films,
Like objectively the best?
objectively the best movies.
Yeah, I think we probably could hash that out.
Of the 18 and soon to be 19 movies, and I think that would be fun to do, and maybe that's something that we'll look at doing as sort of like I feel like maybe around episode 18 or 17 or 18, like last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I don't want to jam that into the Infinity War one.
No.
But certainly
Secret
we could maybe
episode
do that.
20.
Let us know in the comments if that's something you would like us to do. I feel like we have more than enough material. We could do a bonus 20th episode about all of the one shots. We could talk about objectively which movies we think are 1 through 19.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to come up with enough bonus episodes to get us to Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then we have a legitimate reason to continue.
Yes, very true. I didn't plan for this to be a weekly podcast, and that's not going to happen. Do not listen to the man behind the curtains. All right, where are you going to put it?
I think I'm going to put it at... I think I'm going to go with my long-term gut rather than my short-term gut, and I'm going to put it ahead of Iron Man, which I believe to be... I believe I'm going to get angry letters about that, but...
So you're putting this at number 3.
I'm putting this at number 3.
All right. I am putting this at number 4.
Oh, yeah. You're putting it behind Iron Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is better than Captain America. It's better than Guardians. It's not as good as Iron Man. It's probably fairly close. The more I've been staring at this list for the last 5 minutes, the more I realize that I was probably wrong to put Guardians behind Captain America. But I can't change that yet. We get to change it later.
Yep.
I think we said at the end of the second, right? At the end of phase 2?
At the end of phase 2? Is that what we said?
So we get to.
Okay.
I think we get to change it next episode.
Yeah.
Spoiler
I don't
alert!
know.
I'm probably going to switch Guardians of the Galaxy and Captain America, which would once again put our list more in line with each other, which is kind of scary.
Yeah. I think there's one change I'm likely to make at the end of phase 2, and that was the Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 or whatever, the two that were beside each other, where I was like, maybe those ought to switch further down the list. But I feel like my top 5 is pretty safe at the moment. Although I'm basically in a dead heat with this and Iron Man right now. I love them both a lot for different reasons, for polar different reasons. So they are diametrically opposed to one another, but both very good.
All right. Fair enough. Well, we just managed to keep pushing past the even remotely close to the, originally when I conceived of this podcast, I was like, 20 to 30 minutes. And I knew that was a lie. I knew it was going to be closer to 40. And then it was 45, 50. Okay, now we're pushing an hour. Last week's episode was 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 22 seconds. As I talk about this, I realize that not only am I padding the time and making it worse, but we're at 1 hour and 18 minutes.
Yep.
Now, I will put most of the blame on you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you spent, I think, almost
20
as long
minutes.
as the actual
I spent the entire minute explaining
what
the movie.
the hell happened in this movie. But that's fine. I appreciate it, and
Yeah.
it's fun to listen to the recaps. But it is time to say goodbye and good night.
If we had really been committed to staying in universe with this podcast, this episode would have been 1 minute shorter than the first Avengers podcast.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Well, we did not do that.
That was one of the things that almost broke Joss Whedon on this film. Is he set himself a goal, and I think this was a mistake. Let's be very clear about that. He set himself a goal of making sure that the runtime of this film was shorter than the runtime of the first Avengers. That was part of his, I want to make it smaller. This movie probably should have had 10 minutes more.
Probably. Yeah.
Given how much it's doing, he should have just left in Thor's full Vision Quest plotline.
Yep.
And because that's one of the things a lot of people complain about is that plotline doesn't make sense. Really, the only thing that matters in that plot line is he learns about the Infinity Stones and he sees a glimpse of the Vision in that vision, which is what causes him to go back to Avengers Tower and give life to Vision. But the movie could have used a little more breathing room. That plot line could have used a little more fleshing out. Nobody would have begrudged another 5 minutes of screen time of shirtless Thor to
I'm
let
terrified.
that happen.
Yeah, I'm terrified to see what they do in Infinity War. I just added it up. The Wikipedia page has the starring in the sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
For the Avengers Age of Ultron, there are 14 names in that sidebar.
Yeah.
That's a lot of names, and to be fair, a few of them, I'm not going to say don't count, but only have a scene in the film.
Well, Idris Elba.
Idris Elba, Haley Atwell.
Anthony Mackie does not participate as a member of the Avengers during this film. He's only ever present as a civilian and like Cap's sidekick at the party, and then shows up in costume at the end.
Yeah, that's dumb.
Because
where was he?
He was not. He says he has a line about it. In fact, he's like, "Avenging is your business. I'm happy to chase cold leads on our missing persons case."
Yeah, no, I
world building.
So, and then I just went over to Infinity War and counted it up. There's 33 names here.
Mm-hmm.
33 names. Mm-hmm. That's obscene. I'm terrified. This movie's going to be 4 hours long, and I'm going to love it.
There should be a runtime or an approximate runtime in the column.
No,
as well.
they haven't. They have not given any sort of indication of how long it's going to be.
I see.
I mean, they've hinted at it, in the sense that they've like it's going to be pushing 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And to which I say, how is it not just 3?
Yeah.
Like, give me a 3-hour Avengers movie, goddamn.
Yeah.
But I guess it is part 1, so sure. All right.
Unofficially part 1.
We need to say goodnight.
Okay.
It's late. Like, actually late
I
while
know.
we record this.
I have to get up at 5:30.
It's far past your bedtime.
It is way past my bedtime.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We wouldn't be able to do this podcast or any of the other stuff that we do without your support over at Patreon. Patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun if you want to check it out. Maybe chip in. We would really appreciate it. And if you already are, thank you. You are awesome. You can follow myself and Matt over on Twitter. I'm James_LRR. He is Matt_LRR. You can see all the stuff that we stream over at twitch.tv/LoadingReadyRun. Matt, it sounds like he streamed on Sunday.
Yeah, I did stream on Sunday as promised.
Twitch.tv/Matt_LRR. And you can find a link to his, well, let's be honest, you might have streamed, but you still haven't posted any videos to your YouTube channel.
No, I know. But I have downloaded the VODs of my Final Fantasy streams. I just have to get some time together to edit them, which I am planning to do on Saturday this week. So hopefully I can get Final Fantasy up to date, and then knock out a lightning round of my video, like my movie vlog. Because I'm like 6 episodes behind, so it's gonna have to be a lightning round. There's no way I'm doing full episodes for all 6 of them, but I would like to get at least a few sentences out on each of those films before we settle back into a regular update schedule. So I'm gonna try and knock all that out this weekend.
All right,
we'll see how it goes.
You can look forward to that. And with that, we will be back next week with episode 12, and we will be talking about Ant-Man. I'm excited. It's going to be a good show.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll talk to you all later.
Bye.
Guess what I didn't do last week?
You didn't put the credit music in.
No. I thought about it. I even tried for like half a second, and I was like, this doesn't work.
This is
like
far too much effort.
Putting the credit music of the podcast in at that moment just doesn't work. It just doesn't make any sense. And then I was like, well, maybe I could get other music. And then I started to realize, right, this is why I didn't do it in the first place, because I want to make this as easy to edit as possible, because I'm lazy, and because it's fun to just have a quiet moment. Everybody can just reflect on the episode for those like 4 to 6 seconds, and we can move on and we talk about a mid-credit scene. Somebody needs to get Marvel on the phone and just have them consistently do either a mid or a post or both.
They do consistently do a mid or a post or both.
No, what I'm saying is pick one. Pick a lane. Always do the mid-credit and be done with it. Actually, what I would like to see is always do a fun mid-credit scene and always do a world-building post-credit scene. In my ideal universe, that's what I want. All I want is the best of both worlds. I understand why that's probably unrealistic. Yeah. Anyways, in this mid-credit scene, and the only during credit scene, Thanos, dissatisfied by the failures of his pawns, dons a gauntlet, and vows to retrieve the Infinity Stones himself. I read this directly from the Wikipedia page.
All right.
He literally says,
do it myself.
And you might ask yourself, well, hold on a second. I thought the Infinity Gauntlet was in Odin's vault.
You would be mistaken.
Well, not mistaken.
Deceived.
Because as we do find out, I mean, this is a spoiler, so if you haven't watched Thor yet, you should probably, Thor Ragnarok, you should, go watch it, and then rewatch it when we rewatch it. But you find out in Thor Ragnarok that the gauntlet there is fake.
Yeah, I mean, they really just canonize it because it was essentially announced when this credit scene happened that was the case.
Yeah. But no, I mean it's a simple little credit scene that is basically just like, all right, I'm a coming for you. And I mean that's really all there is to it.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Both Avengers movies now have had Thanos end credit scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And does Thanos show? Do we see Thanos again? In any of the other, what other movies do we see Thanos in?
Well, I don't think he's in Guardians 2, is he?
He wasn't. No, not really.
So then, no, we don't see him again until the Infinity War.
Huh, interesting.
I mean, unless you count his ship in the end credit scene of Thor Ragnarok.
Nah,
but
no, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
no, I don't think we see him again.
I'm just making sure that we haven't actually seen him. Yeah. No, it looks like that is when so credit, he's in the first Avengers movie, and then uncredited in Guardians, and then reprises the role uncredited in Age of Ultron, and then Brolin will reprise his role in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War, and its untitled sequel.
So, spoilers, Thanos survives to the sequel?
I guess.
Well, why am I even going to see Infinity War then?
I figure we just wait until whatever next year's movies comes out, and we just see them back to back.
Just watch all of the Marvel movies again back to back in one days long marathon.
No, I was just saying we end this podcast after talking about Black Panther, and then in a year we do the final episode where we are able to properly talk about both or these two Avengers movies that are supposed to be one whole Avenger movie.
Ah, yes. Well, that certainly would give us more time for the newly advanced schedule of Infinity War, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really just Marvel's fault. You should contact them and let them know that we would like to see this movie maybe a little bit sooner.
Yes, we would also we would like to see the movie that they are currently filming concurrent with Infinity War.
Look, I'm not trying to be greedy, Matt. I just want to go to the premiere.
Oh, well, that's the least they could do.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, we're giving them free advertising with this podcast. Who else is that? Who else out there right now is doing that? Like, nobody. Nobody out in the YouTube land or the podcast land is talking about Marvel movies the same way we're talking about Marvel movies,
it's
right?
True. They are not using the exact words in the same order that we are to talk about Marvel movies.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, email me.
It's a convincing argument.
Kevin, buddy, pal, give me an email.
I'm sure that'll work.
I'm sure it'll work too. All right. I'm going to go now.
Yeah,
I'm going to bed. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Good night, Matt.
Good night, James. Good night,
listeners.
listeners.
Bye, everybody. Good night, listeners.
Good night, Moon.